Have you ever been in a situation where your players get in their ship and they're chased through an asteroid field? Or maybe they just want to hop to the next system over? Welcome to the Tabletop Empire. My name is Nate, and today I'm going to be covering everything that you need to know about ship travel, stellar phenomena and terrain, as well as we're going to do a little bit of stuff on vehicular chases. So it's going to be a fun time. Buckle up. Let's get started. So let's begin with sublight travel. That is when you use your sublight engines to travel between the surface of a planet to maybe the moons or other planets within that star system. The book has a table that has some times for how long maybe these travels might take, but those numbers aren't set in stone. It says to travel from the planet's surface to safe hyperdrive, light speed, jumping distance. It's about 5 to 15 minutes. To the planet Moon is 30 to 90 minutes. To another planet in the system, it's 6 to 12 hours, and to go to the edge of the star system is going to be 12 to 72 hours. Again, all of this can vary due to the plot of the story, the ship speed, the size of the system, stellar phenomena, and so on. Next up is hyperspace travel, which is when the players want to jump to another star system. The book actually has a lot of awesome, cool information if you want to know how it works, like lore-wise and knowledge of the Star Wars universe. But in this video, we're just going to be covering the game mechanics. But the TLDR is that there are moving planets and moving systems and changing hyperspace lanes, and it's all very complex. Thankfully, the game mechanics are not complex. Under ideal circumstances, the player would make an easy astrogation check. Certain circumstances can make this check harder, such as a damaged astromech or navicomputer or damaged ship, but the book also has a table you can check out with some other difficulty modifier examples. The time to travel between systems can vary depending on the hyperdrive class, the distance you're trying to travel, as well as the general story and how fast the GM wants it to move along. But generally, you can determine time to travel by multiplying the travel duration table by the ship's hyperdrive class. So let's say you wanted to travel between regions, which the table says is 3 days to 1 week for that distance. For a class 1, you would multiply that by 1, so it'd be the same. But for class 2, it would take twice as long, and a class 3 would take 3 times as long, and so on. Most starships, especially civilian ships, will not have class 1 hyperdrives. Towards the back of the book in chapter 10, The Galaxy, you can actually find a lot of great info on specifics with planets. There's a full 2-page galactic map with all the systems, excluding sequel trilogy planets because those movies came out later, as well as more info on how hyperspace lanes work and whatnot. That'll be something we cover later on the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And while you guys are down there, be sure to blast that like button if you're finding this video helpful. Thanks. So moving on to stellar phenomena and terrain. It's pretty much just space obstacles, such as asteroids, gravitational anomalies, nebulae, black holes, or maybe even purgo. To pass through or near terrain like this, the pilot will need to make a piloting check, even if doing a maneuver that normally doesn't require one. And these same rules apply whether you are on a ground vehicle or a ship in the planet atmosphere or in space. Difficulty of that piloting check will be based on the ship speed and silhouette, and is determined kind of similarly to how you determine your dice roll for skill checks. So you take your ship speed and then half of your silhouette, rounded up. The larger of the two is how many difficulty dice you roll, and the smaller of the two determines how many difficulty dice you upgrade to challenge dice. So if a starfighter has 5 speed and 3 silhouette, you roll against 5 difficulty dice and upgrade 2 of them. Or if you have a Jawa sandcrawler with a speed of 1 and a silhouette of 4, then you roll 2 difficulty dice from the silhouette cut in half and then upgrade 1 from the speed. Now, failing one of these checks does not mean crashing. However, if you roll a despair and the GM wants to have a little fun, it simply means that you were not successful with navigating that situation. So you could still be just as far away from whatever you're trying to get to as you were before, and your speed will drop by 1. If the player is already in the middle of something like an asteroid field and wants to make an action check, then that action's difficulty is as normal. However, the GM may require you to add setback dice depending on whatever you're in the middle of. There's a table in the book which has both planetary and space descriptions that correlate to a number of setback dice. So maybe a loosely packed asteroid field adds no setback dice, but an asteroid tunnel could be 3 or more setback. And lastly, let's talk about chases. This kind of falls under the same structure as spaceship combat, so if you didn't see our last video, go check that out now. I'm gonna put a link down in the description for you. When chases occur, it is mostly narrative. However, skill checks do help determine the outcome. Depending on the vehicles being used, the GM will choose between planetary or normal range bands, as well as determine the starting distance between the chaser and the chasee. The players will make a competitive piloting check, which can range from simple, no difficulty, in the case of it being a large open space, to something like a check we just discussed in the middle of an asteroid field with difficult terrain. Then you compare successes, and then whoever has more successes wins. Winning will change the distance between the chaser and the chasee by one ranged band in favor of whoever won. When the chaser closes the range gap, then the chase should end. Or if the chasee reaches extreme range from the chaser, then they should be considered escaped. But it is up to the GM, and it will vary based on circumstances. So what about in the scenario of the party is in a battle, but two characters speed off in the middle of a high-speed chase? Well, in this case, those two people would roll a competitive check like we just discussed before anybody else takes their turn. And then after that, everybody takes their turn as usual, including the people that already made that competitive check. And on their turn, that's when you determine whether you want to fire weapons, try to boost your speed, and so forth. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and blast that like button if you found this video helpful. Next week, we will be talking about Chapter 8, the Force and Force Powers. Subscribe so you do not miss it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you then, but until then, and as always, may the Force be with you.